I like asking my clients what are their biggest concerns in retirement. I like to have topics for, these videos and for the podcast and for the radio shows and all these different things. And the biggest thing that I am getting by far overwhelming right now is inflation. And that the fears of inflation and that things aren't really slowing down, and it seems like things still cost more than they ever used to and that they ever have. So we're going to look at some actual numbers of inflation and what is inflation really doing in retirement planning. First, if you don't already have a copy of my book, Safe Money Retirement, Your Game Plan for Success, please get your own copy. We will send you one absolutely free with absolutely no obligation. It will explain how you can set up plans that can help you combat inflation. Just give us a call, 833-413-SAFE. That's 833-413-7233, or just log right onto our website, safemoneyretirement.com, and you can request your own copy. All right. So these statistics are from Moody's Analytics. They're actually from their chief economist, Mark Zandi, and he shared this with Fox Business. He said the typical U.S. household needs $227 more in March to purchase the same goods and services that they did last March. So basically in this last year where we've been told inflation basically has leveled out, you still need $227 more right now to get the exact same things than you did 12 months ago. So what does that mean? Well, Americans are paying on average $784 each month compared to 2 years ago and $1,069 3 years ago. So think about this. Okay, it's 2024. 2021, which seems like it was just a few minutes ago, you were paying on average over $1,000 less for the same things you're getting now for over $1,000 more. Well, how can you plan for that? What can you do? Are there plans out there that can help you overcome this inflation that seems like it's not going away? The answer is yes. And I can work with each one of you individually to develop plans. There are plans out there right now that have guaranteed growth for a set number of years, so you can have that growth to overcome inflation. Another thing that came out, the Labor Department just said a couple of weeks ago, and this is the CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index. For those of you that don't know, it's basically a broad measure of price of everyday goods. It includes things like gasoline, groceries, rent. It's just things like that. Basically, that rose 3.5% from the same time last year. So not only is inflation going up, the Consumer Price Index is going up. Inflation has created severe financial pressures for most U.S. households, which are forced to pay more for everyday necessities like food and rent. So how does that relate in retirement? Well, to be honest, it's a little more scary in retirement than it was when you were working. Because when you were working, you could always pick up some overtime or get a bonus or work some extra, do something. But when you're in retirement, unless you're going to go back to work, where are you going to get the extra income? That's where I can help you. Now, obviously, it helps if we have created a plan, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years prior, but there still are things that we can do right now to help overcome inflation moving forward in retirement. And you need to have a long-term vision of this. You need to have a vision, okay, not only what am I going to do for the next 3 years, what am I going to do for the next 10 years, the next 20 years, the next 30 years possibly, maybe even 35, depending on when you retire. And for some people that are retiring even earlier, even longer, making sure that you have a plan to overcome that inflation when it comes. And the last thing that I wanted to mention, just as far as numbers, which is also crazy, average auto insurance costs jumped for the 5th straight month, rising 22.2% from this same time last year. 22.2%. I know I've seen that. I'm sure a lot of y'all probably have too. A corporate economist from Navy Federal Credit Union basically said this entire report that I'm looking at, his quote was, "This was a painful report with very few bright spots for consumers. Retirees are increasingly turning to credit cards to cover expenses, which we all know that's not a good idea either." So what can you do as a retiree to make sure that you have got a handle on inflation, to make sure that it's not going to absolutely strangle you in retirement? Well, what we can do, some of you that have read my book, you've read this, I talk a lot about ladder plans. So what a ladder plan is, essentially when I get someone into retirement, the first thing we do is make sure they're going to have enough income for whatever they need at retirement. Let's say you're listening and let's say you're 60 years old and you're planning on retiring at 65. Okay, well, let's plan on what you're going to need in 5 years. Will you have taken Social Security, or are you deferring that to, full retirement age or 70 or whatever you're doing? Let's figure all that out. Make sure you've got enough income when you retire. But then we also need to make sure that you have got smaller income plans that can continue to grow, that you can turn on in the future when the money that you've got now, when inflation, creeps up and okay, it's getting really tight, let's turn on one of those plans. I've got one client that's got half a dozen of them because he can always turn on another one in the future once he needs more money, for income, for retirement income. So that's one of the ways. Another way are just growth plans. I hear all the time, well, my money's safe, it's just sitting under the mattress, or it's just sitting in savings, I'm not losing any. Well, with inflation, yes, you are. If you've got money just sitting in an account somewhere and it's not making at least what inflation is, then you're losing money right now. So you need to have your money in something that is at least making at least what inflation is, just to keep even, and preferably more than inflation is. And the older you get, the closer you get to retirement, the more advanced your age gets, the higher percentage of that needs to be in safe products that will not be affected if there is another major market event, because most major economists don't think it's if, it's when. We've seen it over and over and over. Look back in history. Look at what happened in 02, 03, 08, 09. I could go back into the 90s. We could go back into the 80s. It always happens. Up, down, up, down, up, down. Well, we've had some downs, but it's been relatively up for quite a while for the most part. When is that going to change? You need to make sure that you have got enough protected so inflation is not going to absolutely strangle you in your retirement. So that's one of the main things I work with people on, is making sure whatever that we have to do, we make a plan for inflation specifically for you and what your situation is, and whether that's an income plan, we do a ladder plan, we do growth plans, we stack all these things together, whatever it is. That's what you need to do to make sure you are prepared for whatever happens with inflation.
The preceding information does not represent tax, legal, or investment advice. Surrender charges apply to base contracts. Optional lifetime income benefit riders are used to calculate lifetime payments only and are not available for cash surrender or in a death benefit unless specified in the annuity contract. Fees may apply. Guarantees are based on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the insurance company. No information presented today should be acted upon without meeting with a qualified and licensed professional. Obviously, by calling us now, you are just taking the first step towards protecting your retirement. It's important that you read all insurance contract disclosures carefully before making a purchase decision. Rates and returns mentioned on this program are subject to change without notice.